All right, everybody. Thank you guys for coming out. I'm David G. I'm an alcoholic, an addict of many sorts. I'm very grateful to be here, grateful for a recovery date in Alcoholics Anonymous of August 8th, 1994. And I'm very grateful for an emotional recovery date in Sexaholics Anonymous of October 1st, 2019. And so grateful to definitely be one of many that is in the fellowship of the Spirit. So thankful to you guys for coming out tonight. We have journeyed 41 weeks through this book at a very in-depth level, probably more so than I've ever done in all the many studies that I've ever done, which have been many. And I'm so grateful because, not only did it benefit so many people around the world that have emailed me and WhatsApped me and called me, and the people that I've been able to take through this process as a result of doing all this, but it has greatly showed me deeper meaning behind working one-on-one with people through the book, taking groups through the book. I was in West Texas just last weekend, and I did a weekend study with a group of folks. And, a lot of the things that have come to me intuitively as a result of this study here, I was able to share there, and I just watched that group come alive in a way it never had. They begin to make a lot of changes in their group. Things are going much better for them now. God is good. God is good. And first, I just, always want to thank a loving God and the presence of that and the awareness of that I have in my life today. Next, I would like to thank my lovely wife for really, giving our time to this Tuesday night for so long. I would like to thank the Bali Book It group for hosting this event all these weeks. And a most big and definite thank you to Miss Ashley for the work that she has done here, for the creating the WhatsApp group, all of the technology, everything that she does behind the scenes to make sure that this study goes off well, sharing it each week, being here. It's just been amazing. Dennis T, as always, for editing these recordings and getting them to her so that she can get them out. It's just been an amazing journey, and it's been a we thing. It hasn't been me. I'm very aware of that in my life today. I love studying the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was very fortunate early on to have had Charlie of Joe and Charlie as one of my first sponsors, and I fell in love with the book before I met Charlie, but I most definitely fell in love with the book in a way that has never ended after meeting Charlie. And I'm just grateful for the things that he shared with me, the way that my life had changed, and the people that have come into my life that God has continued to put in this path and teach me more and more about this sacred truth that is located inside this book. I'll watch people sometimes walk into a meeting and they're struggling so bad and they're hurting so bad in their recovery or in the fellowship, and they're holding that book in their hand, and I'm thinking the whole time, damn, if you will just do a few simple things that are asked out of that book, your life will change. I promise you it will change. And it's changed many of our lives here. As a result of doing this, I've been able to take some of the men that are on here tonight and a lady through this process. And, the guys from Indonesia, I've watched that side of the world begin to light up with this message, the way that it's been carried. And I'm just so grateful. It's just, I can't be grateful enough. And so we're going to finish up on it tonight, but this is not the end by any means. A lot of people have asked us for a long time, what's next? What's next? What's next? And so we've come up with the idea that we will continue to do some workshops, that we will look at fear inventory in depth. We will look at resentments. We'll look at 6 and 7 again in depth, 8 and 9. It won't be an every week thing, but, when we do these, it will be very impactful and very deep. So, anything that we can do to continue this on, we want to continue to do that. So this is most definitely not the end. This is the end of the every Tuesday night study. But if you didn't receive a flyer on the fear inventory workshop that we're going to be doing, we're going to do one on May 7th, which is on a Sunday. And I think we picked around 6 p.m. Central Standard Time for that. We're going to go very in-depth with fear. Some of the people I've taken through the process, there is a particular way that we go through the fear inventory as outlined in the big book. But there's also a way to go through that in your everyday life when fears and things come up. And you're able to use this in a much more in-depth way. One of the ladies here that is a very good friend of mine and that I've been helping with this, had been already exposed to this process in a big way. So I had to come at it in a different way. And one of the ways I did was inventory by fears, the way that I used to do it. And that kind of gave me the idea, hey, let's start a series of workshops and just keep this thing going. And so I thank you guys for coming out and attending those. And so with all that being said, we're going to pick up on page 160 tonight. We're going to read on through the book, and we're going to break it down like we always have. We're going to look at very in-depth. And after that's over, I think Miss Ashley, will take charge and do what she does. And again, thank you so much for allowing me to carry the study to you. So we're going to pick up on page 160. We're going to start where it says, many a man yet dazed. Now, last week, I made a mistake. The self would have been like, oh, my God, don't ever admit that. We talked about Alcoholics Anonymous number 4, and I named that man by the name of Eddie D. Now, his name was not Eddie D. His name was Ernie G. I went back and did some research on this, and we looked very in-depth at it. And this man is named Ernie G. And Ernie G was Alcoholics Anonymous number 4. And what happened was, his parents were very religious, but he wasn't very much of a religious man. He was kind of on the wild side like a lot of us are. So they called him the devil may care chap. You may remember from last week's reading. But this man came in and had a spiritual experience, which, it's not required to be a religious man to have one of those, thank God. And he had an outright spiritual experience at Towns Hospital with Bill, and his life changed considerably like ours does. And, he did very well. He played a big part in Alcoholics Anonymous. He helped a lot of people. He did get pretty cocky after, I think it was about 7 years. He ended up relapsing and going back to drinking again. So just because you've had a spiritual experience and just because we have found a new way to live and things are good, our book has warned us over and over and over through these weeks. If we drop our guard, if we rest on our laurels, if we let our shield down, self is right there waiting. And the idea is that, hey, it's okay. Let's live life now. Let's go play. Let's have fun. Let's make lots of money. Let's do what we do. You've earned it. All of these things. And we begin to act on those things. And the next thing you know, there we are. And we're in trouble before we can even get wrapped around it to get loose. So anybody that with long-term sobriety and recovery on here will most definitely tell you that they've experienced some of these things in their sobriety. So page 160, we're going to look where it says, many a man yet dazed from his hospital experience has stepped over the threshold of that home. Now, when it talks about that home, last week, if you wasn't here, there was a couple that had given their home considerably to this work at that time so that anybody and everyone could have a spiritual way of living where they could come together and meet. Now, the book told us that it would there was standing room only. You couldn't hardly even get a seat there. And so here it's telling us that many men have stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. Now, we're not just talking about freedom from alcohol, drugs, lust, whatever it may be, food, whatever. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the freedom from the bondage of self. We've been talking about that in depth for more than 41 weeks now. And that's what it's talking about. Once we have an experience from that, hell, lust, sex, none of that stuff lives there. I'm not going to do those things anymore because I don't think that way anymore. And so this is what those men stepped into, a new freedom. It says, many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. And so we remember that, all the way back on page 17, it told us that this book, the great news was the book. And that's what was carried to those who suffered from alcoholism. This says he succumbed to that gay crowd inside who laughed at their own misfortune and who understood his. That's a wonderful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. I can tell the things that have happened to me and the most tragic things that happened in my life. And we all laugh about it and have a good time today. Now, it sure as hell wasn't a funny matter in 2019, I can promise you. There wasn't a whole lot of laughing going on in this house at all. In fact, there was a hell of a lot of crying from some and a hell of a lot of anger from the rest. And But that's what we do here. We can laugh at those misfortunes today, and we understand yours. It says, impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when later in an upper room of his house, he heard the story of a man whose experience closely tallied with his own. Now, in those days, they would take you upstairs to what was called the upper room. And there you would do the first 3 steps in order pretty rapidly, pretty quick. And if they didn't feel like you were ready for the fellowship, you didn't come to a meeting. It wasn't like, okay, come on downstairs, let's get you in some meetings, and then whenever you're ready, well, you can just come back. It was none of that. If they didn't feel like you were ready for the fellowship, you didn't come. It's just how it was. It was much different then than it is now. It says the expression on the faces of the women, that indefinable something in the eyes of these men, and you see that spiritual experience. Remember, Bill talked about this with his friend Abby. He said, he opened the door. He stood there, fresh skinned and glowing. There was something different, inexplicably different about his eyes. And that's what we see. You know, it's almost like you can see the soul when you're in that place. The stimulating and electric atmosphere of that place. I've been to a lot of meetings where you can just feel this. And I felt that some throughout these 41 weeks here. And now I've been there when the energy has shifted the other way and it wasn't so pleasant. But it says, you know, it conspired to let him know that there was haven at last. The very practical approach to his problems, the abstinence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, and the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. I definitely want to be with people like that. He and his wife would leave elated by the thought, key words here, we've looked at thoughts all along. We're either on the low side of them or we're on the higher side of them. These guys are coming from a lower side to a higher side, says it like this. They would leave elated by the thought of what they could now do for some stricken acquaintance in his family. I promise you, we don't think that way prior to coming in here, or you might, but I sure as hell didn't. I never thought about anybody but David and what he could do. And if I was around your family, it wasn't a very good idea because, you know, if I was ever doing something for you, it was because I was getting ready to do something to you. And so they knew they had a host of new friends, and it seemed that they had known these strangers always. We can relate to this in the fellowship. They had seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned. There's that vision, again, that we've talked about so many times. The great reality, their all-loving and powerful creator. So if you hold your place right there for just a second, and we journey back to page 55 in the book for just a second. I don't want to get too caught up in cross-referencing on our last night. I want to finish this up. The second to the last paragraph, third to the last paragraph, middle of the page says, we finally saw that faith of some kind of God was part of our makeup. Hell of a sentence. It's a part of my makeup. It always has been. It always will be. Just as much as we have the feeling for a friend, we had to search fearlessly. There's that 4th step. But he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within ourselves. So once we clear all of that away, that debris, that garbage, that trash in that 4th step, it opens up that channel for that great reality that has always been there. And that's exactly what happened here. It says, now this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80 as a rule. When's the last time you ever been to a meeting that wasn't a conference where there were 60 to 80 people there, you know, as a rule? Alcoholics are being attracted from far and near. From what? So that they don't drink no more? No, by the Spirit. See, it's the spirit of attraction rather than promotion. From surrounded towns, families drive long distances to be present. A community 30 miles away has 15 fellow alcoholics. Being in a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds. And if you look at that asterisk and look at the bottom of the page, you always want to do that. This was written in 1939. But this is what it's about for me, what we're fixing to read right here. Life among Alcoholics Anonymous. And it took me 25 years to, well, more, 26, to really understand this. It's about more than attending meetings and visiting hospitals and cleaning up those scrapes and helping to settle the family differences. I think sometimes as older members, we get caught up in this so much. I got to do this. I got to sponsor this many guys. I got to read this book. I got to read that book. I got to go to this meeting. I got to be at that meeting. I got to speak if I'm at. I got to. With the spirit, I don't have to do anything, but I have to be everything. I have to be still. I have to be present. I have to be aware. I have to be all of these things I have to be, but I don't got to do any of that. And that's what it's saying here. Life is so much different than this. And it is for me today. You know, I don't feel like I need to sponsor 30 guys, and I don't feel like I got to go do all this stuff to be okay anymore. And for so long, that's how it was. It says, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money and securing jobs for each other. When justified, these are everyday occurrences. No one, I don't care what you've done, where you've been, who you've been with, who you haven't been with. No one is too discredited or is sunk too low to be welcomed cordially. But there is a condition here, and it's this right here. If he means business. And that's exactly how it is in the Freedom Seekers group today. We love people. We want you to come in, be a part of our group. But if you're not all business with that, there's no point in you being there. And we let it go pretty quick. And some people say it's too rigid, it's too this. I don't care. My book tells me, you know, that we're wrecked in the same vessel here. I don't want to go back to that vessel again. I just don't. Social distinction, petty rivalries, and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. Being wrecked in the same vessel. And minds attuned to the welfare of others. The things which matter so much to some people can no longer signify much to them. How could they? It really doesn't matter. There are no big deals with the spirit. With the self, the ego, it's all a big deal. Everything. Under only slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many eastern cities. And one of these, there's well-known hospital for treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. And 6 years ago, one of our number was a patient there. So I'm pretty sure we're talking about Towns Hospital here. Many of us has felt for the first time the presence of the power of God within its walls. Man, that's beautiful. Again, on page 55, it tells us that again. Let me flip back over here just a second to look at it. You know, it says, with this attitude you cannot fail, the consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. And Emmett Fox says it like this: be careful the God you pick, because that's the one you get. You pick one that's mean and he's held and all this. Well, people say, how the hell can you pick your God? Well, that's exactly what our third step is about. You know, we made a decision to turn our will and life over to the care of. So this is a very, very powerful part of the book. So we're greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there, for he, although it might prejudice his own work, has told us of his belief in ours. Every few days, this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing to recover on a spiritual basis. And I think any time that we work with a new man and he is not willing to do that, I know at least for me, there's no point in me carrying on with that relationship. I'm their friend, I'm there for them. But if we're going to try to recover on anything but a spiritual basis, that's never worked for me. Therapy is a great thing. I will never talk down or bad about the therapists that try to make a living, although I have. I don't anymore. But the reason is my problem is not therapeutic. And it took me a long time to understand that. If my problem is therapeutic, then therapy is a wonderful thing. It works. But if my problem is spiritual, I can do that all I want. But to some extent, I'm still not connected to the power, and I can't figure out why. Well, the reason why, for me, is that my problem is spiritual. It's not therapeutic. So many of us, former patients, go there to help. Now, we're talking about Towns Hospital, obviously, and Dr. Silkworth. This is in an eastern city. There are informal meetings such as we have described to you, where you may now see scores of members. There are the same fast friendships, and there's the same helpfulness to one another as you find in our Western friends. So obviously, we're talking about the difference between Akron, Ohio, and New York City, Bill and Bob. So there's a good bit of travel between East and West. And if you remember in Bill's story, he traveled quite often, back to Akron. And it says we foresee a great increase in this helpful interchange. And today it's absolutely that. So someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at its destination. To some extent, this is already true. Some of us are salesmen And we go about little clusters of 2s, 3s, and 5s that sprung up in other communities. You remember it talked in depthly about this in the forwards. If you want to get more information on that, go back to the forwards and look at that real close. Through contact with our 2 larger centers, those of us who travel drop in as often as we can. This practice enables us to lend a hand and at the same time avoid certain alluring distractions on the road, about which any traveling man can inform Asher. Written in 39 in 2012, there are over, 114,000 groups. There is AA activity in approximately 170 countries with an estimated membership of over 2 million. And we know it to be much more than that today. So thus we grow, and so can you. Though you be but one man with this book in your hand, and I know this to be the truth today. Man, I've walked into places over these years of being in recovery with this book in my hand and sit down and begin to share it from the heart the way that I've been taught to share it. And I've seen it just change, not only me, but all kinds of other people. And it's beautiful. And here's why. Because we believe, and we hope it contains all you will need to begin, not finish, but begin. We know what you are thinking. Some of you are saying to yourself, I'm jittery and alone. I guarantee you, I've felt that way many times. I couldn't do that, but you can, because you forget. Well, why would I forget something like that? Well, that's how self is. It's going to take away that idea and replace it with another one. But you forget that you have just now tapped a source of power much greater than yourself. To duplicate with such backing what we have accomplished is only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. That's all we have to have. And if I don't have that, I need to pray for that. I need to ask for that to come. I need to pray for willingness. I need to pray for patience. And I need to pray for labor because I'm lazy. I don't want to do a lot of labor. I want everybody else to do it. You know what I mean? Well, we know of an AA member who was living in a large community, and he lived there but a few weeks when he found that place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile than any city in the country. Now, that was only a few days ago at this writing in 39. The authorities were much concerned. He got in touch with a prominent psychiatrist who had undertaken certain responsibility for the mental health of the community, and the doctor proved to be able and exceedingly anxious to adopt any workable method of handling the situation. I promise you, a lot of people will listen to us. They rely on us. So he inquired, what did our friend have on the ball? And our friend proceeded to tell him. And with such good effect that the doctor agreed to test it among his patients and certain other alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others from that stream of misery that flows through that institution, that negativity, that depression, that sadness, that uncertainty. It's just that stream of misery. You know, every night in our nightly review, we're asked to take a look at what did we pack into the stream of life. And we're looking at a couple of different things. We're looking, did we pack joyness and helpfulness? Did we pack in, peace and serenity? Or did we pack in misery, depression, sadness? There's a lot of times that I can bring that kind of energy to a situation and everybody there leave feeling that way. I want to look at that each day and try to bring something better each day than I did the day before. Our book on the bottom of 163, last paragraph says, so our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up. We've seen that in our fellowship for sure. But if our experience is a criterion, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous, more than half. And I guarantee you in the last 4 years, I've definitely seen that come to more of a reality than I ever have before. When a few men in this city have found themselves, and that's exactly what we do through this process. We found that connection with the Spirit. We find that that power has never been gone. We see that that system of thoughts, they're waiting. Once that we tune out self and we begin to tune into Spirit, then the power is readily available. Once we have found ourselves, well, once we do that, automatically what this next sentence says is what we do. We have discovered the joy of helping others to face life again. When I'm caught up in self, I don't want to help other people do that. I'm trying to control and dominate their life. There will be no stopping until everyone in that town has had his opportunity to recover. Keywords, if he can and will. Still, you may say that I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. I felt that way. a lot of times. And I most definitely didn't, you know. So they were dead long before I got sober. But we cannot be sure. God will determine that. And so anybody that's on here tonight that says to themselves, hey, this Tuesday night's going to be here anymore. You know, I miss hearing the book in this way. Just remember, you know, that God will determine which way that we go from here. You must remember your real reliance is always upon him. Now, earlier in this study, we took a deep look at self-reliance and reliance upon self with a small s. And as we move through this process, we begin to trust the power and the presence of a loving God. And as we done that, he carried us through steps 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We've said it all the way through here. The man that takes the first 5 steps is not the same man that takes the last 7. A transformation of being takes place here, and we recover from a hopeless state of mind and body. We recover from self. So our real reliance must always be upon him. He will show you, there's that vision we've talked about so much, how to create the fellowship you crave. Asterisk, bottom of the page. Alcoholics Anonymous will be glad to hear from you, and there's their address. It says our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. After everything that we've done up to this point, worked through every step, looked at 1, did the exercises in 2, abandoned self to him in 3, wrote that intense inventory through 4, set long hours with another person reading it. In 5, we did 6 and 7. We stepped out and made amends in 8 and 9. We practiced 10 and 11 from day 1. So that was already there, helping other alcoholics, learning how to use the back 4 chapters as a way of doing every bit of that. Our book says we realize we know only a little. Why? Because knowledge never availed us a damn thing anyway, did it? Self-knowledge is not what we were after the whole time. Knowledge of self is what we were after, and how to put that thing to sleep. And so we realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. And if he's not constantly doing that, maybe there's something still there that is blocking you from that consistency. I would be trying to take a look at what that is. Ask him. That's a prayer. Remember, anytime we see those 2 words in this book, that's prayer. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. Now, for years, I didn't do that prayer. I didn't say that, but I can guarantee you every time in my daily prayers now in the beginning, that's one thing I ask. Some days I get many opportunities to do that. Other times I don't. But it says ask him in your morning meditation. So that's prayer. That's a meditation. Here's the vision. What can I do? I need the vision to be able to see that. The answers will come if your own house is in order. So if you're not getting answers, maybe something's out of order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. And we're talking about a spiritual experience here, not just helping a man get free of booze. That, as important as that is and the other things, that's far from what we've been talking about here all these weeks and months. See to it that your relationship with him is right. That's a direction. And great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This has been a fact of my life for as long back as I can remember. This is the great fact for us. So abandon yourself to God as you understand God. We're going to look at that today as the steps 1, 2, and 3 in Alcoholics Anonymous. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. We're going to look at that as steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. Clear away the wreckage of your past. That's what we do in 8 and 9. Give freely of what you find and join us. And that's what we do in 10, 11, and 12. So every bit of the program is summarized right there in those few sentences. And here's the great payoff, the great awakening. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. Now, there's not a hell of a lot of requirements to enter the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's most definitely some to enter the fellowship of the Spirit. I'll do this one last time, real close. If you'll just hold your page right there and run back with me to page 60 in this book. And we drop down past C. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. That's one of the first requirements of the Fellowship of the Spirit. If you'll flip over to page 64, second to the last paragraph. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup, which caused our failure. Being convinced that self, not booze, drugs, lust, sex, any of that, manifest in various ways is what had defeated us. We considered this common. And there's another requirement. Page 67. Second full paragraph. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to God, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. There's another requirement. So they're all throughout the book. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. You will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. And may God bless you and keep you until then. So thank you so much. High Road to a New Freedom Group. I love you guys. Been an amazing study. It's kind of bittersweet, but better things to come, I'm sure. So again, thank you guys for allowing me to share all these weeks and months. And we're super glad that we got to connect. Thank you.
This concludes David's share on tonight's chapter, but we encourage you to keep listening as he answers questions from the audience and shares additional experience, strength, and hope.
First of all, just want to say thanks to David for your beautiful reading and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with us for 41 weeks. It's pretty amazing. I joined this party just about 20 weeks in. So I'm really grateful for this, and I'm grateful also to Ashley and Dennis for chairing and doing the backup. I'm engaging this process now, and I meet with my sponsor, but I find it very powerful, whatever point of the book that I'm in, to go to that tape from that week as well. And so sometimes I listen more than once. So I'm really grateful that this is done, and that there's an audit trail, there's a legacy of all this sort of stuff. So I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Jay. I think Jay was involved with starting this thing. I know Jay because I live in Bali. Jay lives in Bali. We know each other from other recovery communities. So I just want to acknowledge you, Jay. I think you were one of the initiators of this. So really grateful. And also thanking Jake, because Jake tried to push me into coming here. I'm not a morning person, so it took me about 20 weeks to get my act together. I got a very simple question for you, David. Stupid user question. It said on page 163, we know an AA member who was living in a large community. There was a doctor in that community and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just curious, what community are they referring to? Is that Cleveland or somewhere else?
We're talking about the eastern city of New York with this particular paragraph that you're talking about there on 163. He was living in a large community, lived there but a few weeks when he found that place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile. And I think this was referred to one time before in the book prior. I believe it was in There Is a Solution, page 19. And I think if we look down about the second paragraph, almost, not quite to the middle, but almost, it says, if we keep away we're going, there's little doubt that much good will result, but the surface of the problem can hardly be scratched. So those of us that live close by, hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. And I think it kind of connects back to this, but to answer your question, as far as my understanding is, this is what was taking place in New York at that time. So Danny, I'm really glad that I joined in 20 weeks later. It's been amazing to watch you go through this work and have a spiritual experience. We always say that the man that's taken the first 5 is not the same man that's taken the last 7. So there's a different man asking that question this week than there has been all these others, because Danny is in the middle of his 5th and just about finished, if not finished by this point. So this study has definitely impacted the lives of several, especially on that side of the world. I want to thank Jay as well. Jay was a guy that wasn't supposed to make it. And he made it. And, God's got bigger ideas than any of us, but, him beginning to share that message intrigued others. And that's how this book study was ignited. That was the spark that ignited it for sure, was the work that I'd done with him. So I'm very grateful for all of you in Bali, you as well, Anushka. And it's amazing to see what's taking place there. So anyway, let me close with that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. It's been a wonderful, wonderful study. I appreciate you. I was wondering if you would mind maybe unpacking a little bit more in a very important sentence on page 164. It says, see to it that your relationship with him, capital H means God, is right. Could you unpack that a little bit more? I know we've talked a lot about this, but anything you can say that would add to our understanding of what is a right relationship with God would be appreciated. Thanks.
I know for the fact that in the first 3 steps is where we get right with him. And the first 3 steps, at least as outlined in this book, cover the first 63 pages. So for me, when I made that decision on page 62, and I confirmed it with that prayer on page 63, and I realized that self is who had been the director all along, I set that keystone in place with another person, and I took this prayer. I got right with my creator there. But in order for me to stay right with him, I had to do steps 4 through 9 and practice 10, 11, and 12 daily. This was my experience. And as I moved through that process of inventory, and I really began to discover that is not who I was. That's who I'd become based on a narrative. You've heard me say that many times. It's very easy for me to keep my relationship with him right today. And I just want to go back one more time to this page 55. This is so powerful right here, if you read between the lines and not just the black and white. And we will read that again. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was part of our makeup just as much as we had the feeling for a friend. So this book is starting to talk to me and tell me that you're going to find this relationship and how to be right with him, one, through a friend. It's kind of a key right there for me to pay attention for that. Now, in order for me to be right with my friend, I'm going to have to first see that it was the mistakes that I had made rather than the ones that I thought he had made. And that's what that next sentence is. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he, capital H, was there. That's where he's at. He, talking about God, just as you said, was just as much a fact as we were. So we found the great reality deep within. The last analysis is only there that he may be found. So for me, it comes down to this. If I hold you at a distance, I hold this power at a distance. When I let you in, I let this power in. And that's how my relationship with him is right. I must do 8, 9 to get right with you so that I can stay right with him. And that's been my experience on that. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you, David. That was a beautiful answer. Appreciate it.
I just want to say a massive thank you for this group, for you, Ashley, for all the work you've done, for you, Dennis, and for you, David. You know, and I suppose firstly, I just want to acknowledge a loving God. You know, and the great spirit as I know him today. You know, and I've been here for most of this study, and I have had a spiritual experience sitting in these rooms with you guys, you know. And I also want to just thank Jay as well, who's up there on the screen, for initiating this, you know, and also for the Bali Book It group. It's our group here in Bali, you know, Anushka, Danny, and Jay, because we have an epic little core now of people here in Bali who are doing this work. You know, and I feel really blessed to have done this work over the last 40 weeks and got through the 5th step and now into the 9th step. And I've been doing daily 10th and 11th as directed by David and the Big Book Step Study System. And, you know, I have to say that at the very beginning of this study, I've been sober for many years. I've been sober since November 20th, 1995. So I've had a few years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've done the steps in a lot of different ways. You know, and at the beginning of this study, I was not right. I was not feeling the spirit in my life as a result of being addicted to porn. You know, and I find that, you know, like I said, I've been sober a while and I should have this thing licked, and yet I wasn't, and I was in pain and I was struggling, and I have had that removed. I can say that, and it still blows my mind that I no longer have that as a direct result of being here with you guys and doing the work. You know, and I sit here just really grateful for that. And, like I have kids, I have twin girls, and I felt, really not well around this stuff. And it was revealed to me, that I've been given this new key that you talk about, David, and I find myself quoting you a lot, just all these things you talk about, how the hand of God, and, not self-knowledge, but knowledge of self, and all these other things, and I'm real grateful to be sat here. And I concur with what Danny said, the YouTube and now the Spotify that's online as a legacy. I've been going back. Like yesterday, I went back to the first two and started with a pen and back in my book and just writing, and it's incredibly powerful. It's like the living word, So once again, I just have a lot of gratitude, and I really appreciate this. And I'm a little bit sad this is going to be over, but at the same time, I know, it's like just as you've explained, we just continue doing this work, and there are many new friends. I'm sitting here in India at the moment. I'm sitting in an ashram, Ramana Maharishi's ashram, and really feeling the benefits of feeling clean inside, and sitting and meditating and praying and saying a lot of prayers. And I'm more than anything, I'm just really grateful. And so I think I've spoken well over 3 minutes, but I don't really have a question, but just my experience. Thank you. Thanks again.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to express just the deepest level of gratitude that I feel. It's really hard to convey in words how I feel and how I've changed as a result of this work. And I'm thinking about what to say, and I know that's self, so I'm just going to speak from the heart. I was at a low point a year and a half ago. My life was just broken in every way, and I was 24 years sober, and I was wondering what the hell was wrong. I used to sit in meetings and listen to the promises being read and just kind of shake my head like I just didn't experience them. I couldn't relate. I was wondering, when do these kick in? After 25 years of sobriety, when does this happen? And it was during that low point when I continued coming back and just trying to do what I could. And I was outreaching with a guy from one of the S fellowships. Even though I was in active addiction, I was just trying to be of service to help someone. And I saw him change. I saw him light up. I just saw something internally shift, and he transformed. And I was like, what is going on here? It happened in less than a month's time. This was a guy I considered hopeless. He did so much work and he couldn't stay sober. And I just saw him change and start freaking working the steps and staying sober and carrying a powerful message on. I was like, something's going on here. He's tapped into the power. And it was, he extended the offer to reach out to David, and I was at a low point, and I had nowhere else to turn. And I, with the desperation and willingness of being at a bottom, 24 years sober, I was really ready to go to any length for this thing. And I just reorganized my life and built it around recovery and doing these steps. And as a result of that, I've had a transformative spiritual experience that has changed every aspect of my life and every relationship I have. And for the first time, I have experienced the miracles and promises. And I've just continue to wonder what's next on the spiritual journey. And David, you are the reason for that. And I just wanted to say thank you to you and to Ashley and to Dennis and everyone who comes and participates. Like, this really has changed not just our Bali group, but I'm seeing it have a ripple effect, and it's reaching out and touching the lives of people in Thailand, in the Philippines, in Australia, in the UK. I mean, this thing is spreading like wildfire all over the world. And it's you, brother, carrying this message. So not only do I want to tell you how much I appreciate it, but I want to tell you that I truly love you like a brother, man. And I just can't wait to see what's next. So thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody, all of you men and women that are here. It's been a great privilege to come from where I was at 25 years sober as well, from the desperation and the bottom, and, just be able to rise up and watch God work through me in a way. Sometimes I still sit back and think, man, that's got to be God, because your dumbass would have already screwed this up more than, but it's just amazing what's happened. And like it's been said here so many times, I'm just humbled, by the grace and the power that I've been given in order to help people all over the world today. And I don't look for that to change anytime soon. If anything, it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, because, we're far from being done here. We're just getting started. So thank you guys for the great word. And I'm just so grateful for each of you. And I love you guys over in Bali, man. It's a great deal. And I'm going to be seeing you for damn sure. We've already made that connection and that plan. And yeah, it's going to happen. So anyway, thank you guys.
And Ashley, thank you for all your work. And David, I love you, brother. This has been an amazing, it's not even really a marathon for me. It's just something that I've just enjoyed. It went by actually really too fast, 41 weeks. The one thing on the sentence, and I think it really applies to this group, on page 162, down in that first paragraph, says, talking about the doctor, understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. He wasn't just sending everybody. He could see those that were broken, desperate, and ready. And man, that's what, to see people in this group for 41 weeks come in every week, I can't tell you the joy that brings to my heart. And as you go out and you do this work and you watch those grow like that, it's the greatest joy of being in this program. It truly is. I love when they said that on that page 160, the expressions of the faces of the women, that indefinable something of the eyes of the men. They had saw something because they had visioned the great reality. And I love the word visioned in the Webster's 1913 dictionary that would have been Bill's dictionary. It says having the power of seeing visions, and that only comes from our higher power. And the more that we're in here and the more that we rely upon this power, we're not doing anything. The power is doing it through us. As we saw how the power did this through David for 41 weeks. And when I got to meet this man, it changed my life. And I'm excited to see, like you said, the ripple effect. Man, it's something we don't want to miss. So I love you guys. And thank you so much for just sticking in there. But to just come and do this with you every week, it's been a joy for me. And God bless y'all.
Thank you so much to everyone who attended the High Road to a New Freedom Big Book Study with David G. Whether you've joined us live for 41 weeks or just listened to 41 recordings via Google Drive, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast, we are incredibly grateful for your participation. In our live study, we talked about our 7th tradition every week before Q&A, so members could donate on behalf of the study to help cover expenses of meeting virtually and attracting people to join us from all over the world. We wanted to take a moment to thank the people who faithfully contributed every month to our study or donated as they felt led. Your generosity was extremely appreciated and helped carry the message to the addict who still suffers. In addition to David's time sharing each week, there was much service that was put into making the study possible. All of the flyers, templates, examples, and resources were created with a graphic design tool that costs $200 a year. To provide a free option for people to listen to the study via YouTube instead of Spotify, we used a video editing tool which cost $400 a year. Lastly, to enable us to meet virtually via Zoom, our license costs $200 a year for a grand total of $800 a year in expenses. Every little bit helps. We encourage you to give back what you received from this study to our 7th tradition. Your financial support will enable us to continue to host future studies, workshops, and more for addicts across the globe in all fellowships. On page 128 of the Big Book, Bill reminds us that giving rather than getting should be our guiding principle. To donate via PayPal, you can find our handle at High Road New Freedom, HIGHROADNEWFREEDOM. Or you can donate via Venmo at High Road to a New Freedom, HIGHROADTOANEWFREEDOM. If you are interested in joining our WhatsApp, downloading Big Book templates and examples, or learning about future events, we encourage you to visit our link tree at linktr.ee/high road to a new freedom. HIGHROADTOANEWFREEDOM. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at a future study soon. God bless.